Okay, so for those of you that are online, I'm Kyle Hartung with MHC, Nick Fritz as well. We did some intros without starting the session, so apologize for that. But essentially today we're going to be talking about MHC NorthStar, which is our next-gen multi-tenant SaaS platform that's really built around procure-to-pay automation and also has a very long roadmap that's going to extend into lots of other features and functionality in the future. Today we're going to be talking about procure-to-pay imaging and automation, and MHC is really becoming a SaaS organization. Historically, our solutions are deployed on premise. So we have hundreds and hundreds of customers that have our software on premise. Going forward, our solutions are cloud-based. We're absolutely going to continue to support our customers that have our what we call MHC Classic products. Document Express, Document Self-Service, Image Express are what we call MHC Classic products. Absolutely going to continue to support you for the foreseeable future. But the platform we're going to talk about today is our go-forward platform, our next-gen solution, which is a multi-tenant SaaS solution. When we talk about procure-to-pay, and SaaS, a lot of challenges that people face would be, requiring IT resources to deploy a solution, lengthy implementations, hard to use, not an intuitive interface, not an intuitive solution. And we'll talk about NorthStar and how that platform is really, it's built to solve all of those problems. All right, go ahead, Nick. So obviously not a new concept. Organizations have been going to the cloud for a very long time. It's fairly new for MHC. Again, historically, our platforms have been deployed on premise. We have a few different cloud options. MHC NorthStar is a multi-tenant cloud. We also have a single-tenant cloud where if you wanted to lift and shift your existing MHC applications to our cloud, we can do that as well. So taking Document Express, Image Express, Document Self-Service, and moving those to a single-tenant cloud is an option as well. MHC NorthStar is a multi-tenant cloud, which we're going to talk about. These are some of the key benefits of why organizations move to the cloud. It's blinking a little bit, but I think we're able to deal with it. So one story that I like to tell is one of our first MHC NorthStar customers actually called me at the end of last year, and they were in the middle of a cyber attack. They lost access to all of their on-premise software. They couldn't process documents. They had Infor Cloud Suite in the cloud, so they had access to that system, but they couldn't get to any of their on-premise systems, which included MHC to process payments and invoices. And so that was a perfect use case for why cloud supports business continuity and those types of situations. Hopefully, no one is involved in those, but having a cloud solution basically gave them the ability to not have to worry about those types of cyber attacks. Essentially, Nick, is the presentation blinking on your side too, or is it just on our side? It's just on our side. It's
not. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll just proceed. All right. Go ahead, Nick. This is a stat from Gartner, which I thought is pretty impactful. On-premise solutions can cost as much as 4 times to support, and you can spend up to 75% of your total IT budget just to maintain and run those existing applications. So for anybody that's used to MHC on-premise, we have servers, we have databases, we have infrastructure that you have to support, and obviously there are costs that go along with that. So shifting to the cloud deployment where MHC supports and maintains the infrastructure for you is really what we're getting at here. All right, so MHC NorthStar. Nick's going to take us through a demo here in just a couple of minutes just to set that up. That's going to be the best part of this presentation. Nick's going to show us a live demo all the way, for invoice capture all the way through payment. So he'll be getting into that in just a minute. Just to set the stage a little bit, again, it's a SaaS platform, so there's nothing to deploy on premise. Essentially, you would sign up, and we have a tenant that we would stand up for you, and then you have access to the system. And we say no code, low code, meaning you configure the system based off of the functionality that's available. Where today with Document Express, people are used to downloading DLLs and installing those, and that all goes away with NorthStar. Just a quick preview before Nick gets into the demo. There are different graphs and dashboards that are part of the solution. And really it's about helping you manage your procure-to-pay process, invoices being a huge part of that, and presenting, your AP manager, your controller, your VP of finance with the data that they need, right from some intuitive dashboards that are put right in front of them. And when we talk about intelligent capture, Nick's going to show a demo of the intelligent capture, but essentially what we mean by intelligent capture, a lot of people are familiar with the term OCR, optical character recognition. But when we say intelligent capture, we're talking about taking that a step further, using AI, using machine learning, so that as your AP processors make corrections, the system gets smarter and it learns, and those data extraction rates go up over time as they're processing invoices. And Nick will get into some of that machine learning and AI here in just a minute as well. Also, check output. So a lot of organizations use MHC for AP checks, for purchase orders. That's all part of NorthStar as well. Essentially, we provide interfaces to the different Infor data files. You bring them in. It's a very similar process, but a very different platform, as you'll see in the demo. Similar functionality, but a very different platform of, a web responsive UI that you'll see here in just a minute. And then this gets into that no-code functionality. So, we provide you with the platform. It gives your users the ability to set up the workflows and configure the system according to your needs. And that's the whole, low-code, no-code functionality there. Again, with intelligent capture, we hook it up to your vendor data. We hook it up to your PO data. And really, it's all about reducing manual data entry. So I guess for anybody in here that might be an accounts payable, I guess, show of hands, has anybody used an intelligent capture and OCR solution today within your organization? Couple, okay.
We've used OCR.
Okay.
Sure about intelligent capture.
Okay. So yeah, you'll see in the demo what our system does is we hook it up to your vendor data, your PO data. So it's looking at your trusted data. It's taking what it extracts and then it's comparing it to that. So it's taking OCR to the next level, and then also has that machine learning and AI built on top of it. It also creates the visibility. So as soon as an invoice enters your organization, you'll be able to track it down at any point in the process. All right, go ahead, Nick. Nick's going to cover some of these dashboards here in just a minute. This is just a quick preview of an accounts payable dashboard, but there's role-based dashboards that are part of the NorthStar solution. And then this is more about invoice approvals, being able to track down where an invoice is at any point in the process, who it's waiting for approval from. Here's a view of someone approving an invoice, and you'll see it's available through it's a web or a mobile responsive UI as well. So you don't need a mobile app, but it's a nice clean look on a mobile device as well. Nick will get into some of that in the demo as well. This is just a preview of the check printing piece. Similar functionality, as I mentioned, to Document Express, but it's obviously a different, more modern interface that's all web-based. And then we'll get into some of the functionality around procurement as well. You can absolutely image and store and process purchase orders, packing slips, receiving documents, your remittance advices, your AP payments, your invoices, and then they all link together. They're all integrated within the Infor application, whether you're Infor Lawson or Infor Cloud Suite. And if you just cruise along here to the next one here. So this just shows our integration with Infor Lawson. It also has, we also have integration with Infor Cloud Suite. So a user's on, in this case, AP90, they're pulling up a company vendor and invoice, and then you can drill right into that invoice image. And then on the right-hand side, you can see any ACH payments or any AP payments that would be tied to that transaction right within the NorthStar application.
And through my demo today, I will be showing the integration with Cloud Suite just for a nugget there.
All right, Nick, I'll let you take it for the demo.
Sounds good. Give me a couple of seconds here to get situated. I am going to kill my camera.
Looks good.
Excellent. So thank you all. Again, I'm going to go through the end-to-end invoice process, end-to-end really invoice-to-pay process. We'll touch on MHC NorthStar throughout the process, and obviously the intelligent capture, the web forms, and the integration to Infor Cloud Suite. So this is my demo system. Got some really high-level data. As you can see, these unprocessed tasks by team section, not very widespread, right? These are all kind of aged in the system for quite a few days. My favorite report I like to talk about, though, is first of all, unprocessed invoices by due date. I really like that report because it shows not only what's overdue, but the accruals, the quantity, and any of these colored graph sections are drillable. So if you would click on any one of these sections, it's going to bring you in, let you drill deeper to see those transactions, to understand, again, what needs to get paid and when. The invoice summary report I also really like on the payment side of the fence. As you see, there has been nothing paid. But if we're looking at it from a given month, it's really nice because it's going to show what's unprocessed in our system, right, whether it's overdue or not, as well as what's been interfaced to Infor, and then ultimately what's been paid. So you'd obviously, if a check run had been paid against some of the invoices in this time period, you'd see a chunk of this in this dark green color to really signify what work has been completed on the invoice side and paid versus what's in the system still. And then the last report I'm going to touch on here that I really, really like is invoices by team member. And this, again, coming from an implementation background, I think really is the most impactful for AP departments, just because it really gives you the ability, or really the AP management and leadership, to have the ability to see where the invoices are in the field, right? You want to have a good pulse of all of the invoices assigned to who and for what dollar amount. And then I think one of the other really important pieces here is this average invoice age, right? That really helps you identify those team members that are causing bottlenecks and maybe a little bit of a delay in approval. And then that ultimately can give you that information to either have a conversation, help with training, or anything that may help speed up that invoice approval time. Another really cool part of this is it helps you or gives you the opportunity to mass assign. So if I need to move a bunch of work from Jamie to Carrie or Carrie to Mark or anywhere in between due to turnover or illness or leave, whatever the case is, right, it's really easy to just do a bulk switch from one user to another. Something I really like about the NorthStar platform. So yeah, our goal is to bring that visibility to your team, right? Ultimately, that 30,000-foot view of what's out in the field, who it's assigned to, as well as give you an opportunity to drill down a little deeper and get a granular view by user or by scenario. Now, in order to get invoices into the system, we can use a couple of features, but I'm going to stress and focus on our intelligent capture today. Our intelligent capture solution really is something that I'm excited about. It really gives us more technology than just that standard OCR, as Kyle called out, right? We're using that OCR still to read the characters off the document, but also some artificial intelligence and AI to really help your team get smarter as they use the system. Before those technologies take hold, though, we've got to get invoices into the system. So what I'm going to do is simulate an email from a vendor, okay? So our goal is to attach to an inbox in your system, or really in your organization, that your invoices are getting sent to, right? Anytime your vendors send an invoice that's attached to an email, we're going to automatically extract those attachments, pull them into the system for those various technologies to take hold, right? So vendor sends in your invoices. Nobody has to monitor that inbox, open up the attachments, pull them into the system. The system's automatically pulling them in and letting the technology do the work. So once the invoices are ingested, right, through an email, or again, we have scanner, hot folder. There's a browse feature as well. So we're trying to give you multiple easy ways to get invoices into the system and get the data extracted. But once they're ingested, the data is extracted, it's classified, right, and comparing against your Infor data to make sure that we have valid information. That's your vendors, that's your PO header, and your PO line. And again, our goal with intelligent capture, as a lot of organizations, is to minimize that data entry, right? Data entry is error prone, it's time consuming. We want to change that narrative from data entry to data verification, right? They're just verifying a couple of fields as needed, rather than keying 8 to 10 fields, maybe more if you're talking purchase order or service PO type invoices. So as the invoices come in, the technology takes hold and ultimately ingests them into the system. From there, you're going to see something that looks like this. The left side is going to be the thumbnails of the invoices. The right side is going to be all the data points that we defined through your implementation of what needs to be extracted and validated from the invoices. Right? This is extremely configurable, something that we can cater to your business. Obviously, there's a level of minimal fields that Infor needs to release, but other than that, we can be extremely flexible on if-thens and conditional logic and setting information from POs and all of that good technology type information, since we have your vendor and PO data. So you'll see here on the left side that there's 3 invoices, only one of which has this red flag. I'm going to come back to him in just a second. But the other 2 you'll see are what we call touchless processing, right? This first example is a non-PO invoice. We've gotten all of the data points extracted, right? This is my vendor dropdown. It's pretty detailed in this one. Since it was validated, you're going to see it collapsed and in green, right? If there was an issue, you'd see it in yellow and potentially or red, and see a flag like you're seeing on invoice number 1 there. Now, invoice number, invoice date. This one we're extracting an explicit due date. We can also set that from vendor terms. But what we're doing here is again extracting the data out of the box, and the machine learning concept comes into play with each of these data points, because what it's going to do is remember the moves your users are taking if it's outside of the default extraction. So if I were to click the X here and extract, the zip code, right? That one thinks it's an actual zip code, but let's just say net 60 or franc, right? Any of those data points that we're extracting, the system's going to remember where they're extracted in relation to this vendor, right? So if medical supply code's invoice number is being misread, we make the adjustment. The system's going to get smarter as it goes and just increase the extraction rates as you use the system. And what I like is, again, the point and shoot interface is also really important here too, because we're not actually keying. I'm not even using my keyboard at all. I'm using, right now I'm just using my mouse and an enter key, which obviously would come to the keyboard. But again, trying to minimize that data entry, that 10 key entry, and go to an extraction type model. The next touchless document, again, all of the data has been extracted accurately, which is why we don't see any flags or concerns, right? Vendor all the way down, same information to the purchase order, right? We validated the header number or the header PO number, right? And since we know it's valid because of the green notation, we're validating the line item data. And based on that line item data, we're setting the line number that Infor has, right? So we've understood that this document is a perfect match. And so because of that, we know we can set the line number here, move this into Infor for release and payment. So this, not only is it touchless and intelligent capture, this would be straight through processing, right? This is good. This has the potential to move right from the email box into Infor for release and payment, and it's finalized without a human even touching the document. I will add that's definitely something we can toggle on and off. It's something that as users use the system, they're going to build that confidence and either enable it or continue to review each document just to validate. But again, efficiency, automation, right? You're going to want to utilize that touchless or straight through processing as much as possible. Now, the last invoice I'm going to touch on in intelligent capture is this first one, and you can see the red flag here. So what I like to do, I'm going to move this up a little bit, is click right on the error. And what that flag does, and really I'll call it an error, it brings it right to focus. Whether this is the first one, first field, company number, vendor number, or the last, like in this case, the last line item in the invoice extraction, right? It's going to bring it right into focus. It makes it really easy for the users to identify the problem and finalize it or move it downstream for exception processing. So what I'm seeing here is this third line item has an issue. Now I'm looking at the document. It's been extracted accurately for a case at 500, but we've got a red line. So by clicking this details key, this is going to bring visibility into the open PO lines for this PO immediately. So since PO is 32 is valid, right, highlighted in green, you'll see all the open line items when I click the details key for the PO, and that again is being originated from the Infor system as your source of truth. So what you're seeing is that, hey, I ordered 10 each at 50 for $500, but they billed me for a case at 500. Now you can move this downstream automatically to purchasing to take action and adjust the PO if you'd like. We leave this red flag intact, move it downstream, and at which point we can control who gets the email notifications or the visibility to the error or red flag so it can be adjusted. Now, for my sake, I'm just going to override it and make it put it on the PO just because I really like to show that in real time, we can make that comparison against your PO data, check the rules on either button click or tab, and then from there, if the data is validated, it sets the key information that's needed in Infor. And in this case, the big one, as you guys know, is the line number. Making sure that the line number that we're extracting and that we're setting on the way to Infor is accurate, so we're releasing and paying against the correct PO lines. So again, now we've got all these. Oh, go ahead. Is there a question?
No.
Great. Sorry, I thought I heard some feedback. So now we've got all three of these invoices resolved, right? There's no red flags on the document. So we've hit the data thresholds for all the invoices in this batch. So now we're okay to release them downstream for the next level of data evaluation. And that's going to come into play in NorthStar, right? It's going to evaluate the data that's been extracted from those invoices and make a determination on what's next. It could be a purchase order issue like I called out, and at which point it could funnel right to the buyer for that PO. Or if in the case of a new vendor, right, we've got a new vendor. If we're leaving the vendor option red or incomplete, or can we check a new vendor checkbox, we can flow that right in to somebody who's creating your vendors in Infor, whether that's AP10 or the vendor maintenance section in Cloud Suite, right? So you'll see these three invoices come in that I just validated. It's going to check against the rules that we have in this system. Now, I've got very basic rules right now. Anything that's a non-PO is stopping, and that's what you see happening here. The non-PO that I showed in the demonstration is stopping. The two PO invoices that have been validated without errors are going to flow directly into Infor Lawson, right? Because we know that we've gotten approval. The data has been validated against the PO data. There's no reason to look at it again. Let's just get this released and paid, get it out of our queue, right? So those rules can be extremely granular, right? Obviously, with organizations, I'll use healthcare as an example, right? There's a large number of departments and people that need to get eyes on different invoices. These routes can be as rigid as possible, or as rigid as you'd like, or as simple as possible, right? So it's really flexible for you guys and something that you can maintain within the system very easily, again, trying to minimize as much IT involvement as possible on that sort of thing. Now, anything that lands in the active tab, an email is going to get sent out. I'm going to quick go over here, jump into my email. The email is going to look something like this, right? It's going to have the sender, who's it to, the key information around the invoice, and then a couple buttons. One's a review task button that brings you into the actual transaction, which I'll jump into shortly. The other is view all my tasks, which is like the queue of all of the invoices that are assigned to an individual at that time. So I'm going to go ahead and click review task. That's going to bring me right into that invoice transaction that was a non-PO that we know needs approval, right? A couple things before I get into the anatomy. The invoice duplicate flag is extremely important. Obviously, you know, when you guys are dealing with duplicates, it's duplicate work. It's, you know, especially if one slips through, right? It's even more work, right? We're trying to bring it to your attention as early as possible. So you're going to see it in this, and then also in the work page, you may have noticed that the invoice number is highlighted in red. So that's going to be your signifier that the company number, vendor number, and invoice number that on this invoice has been extracted and matches another transaction, which in this case is also the one right above it. So in the task, it's also going to show it. I'm going to go ahead and click unmark to keep it processing, but you would have the ability to view the other duplicate instances. You could disapprove it. You could reject it. You could request more information or reassign it. Again, just for the sake of the demo, I'm going to unmark it and process it business as usual. Okay. So on the right margin here, you're going to see all the data points that were extracted, right? Extremely configurable. I'll get into the GL in just a minute. Task details, some high-level information around the actual transaction, due date, created date, so on and so forth. And then notes and attachments, right? This is the ability for you to have an internal dialogue, attach any supporting documentation, right? Really, any ancillary information or conversation or documentation around the invoice can be stored in that notes and attachments section and will travel and store with the invoice for the life of the invoice. And then last but not least, the history log, right? Who's done what, when, what action has been taken. You'll see it already applied to GL as soon as it loaded into the system, which I'll touch on here in just a minute. But again, if you have an auditor come on site, give them a view-only login to NorthStar and let them loose. They can look at all of the invoices, their history. You don't have to help them dig through filing cabinets or other SharePoint folders or emails or anything like that. So something that I always recommended as in my implementations was give your auditor a login and or create one right away. So when they do show up or if they show up, you're ready and waiting. Now, the invoice data page, I'm going to touch on the GL now. So what I have enabled here is the auto GL application. What that's doing is remembering the last GL allocation for this vendor. Now, that's not going to work for all vendors, so this is something you could toggle on and off, either for a button click or automatic apply. But the idea is we're going to integrate to your general ledger, right? Whether it's Infor 10, Infor Cloud Suite, we're going to integrate to your ledger and then make that data available through our system. It is going to remember that GL from the last approval for a vendor. So you could hit the button and accept it, or you could hit the button and change it up in order to save it and move it forward. In this case, I've got the auto apply on, so it is kind of just storing the last one that I approved for this vendor. But something that users really like for those big GL type documents like phone bills and heat bills and things that have to be allocated to 50 or 30 to 50 to 100 general ledger accounts. Now, also our mobile approvals. I'd be a disservice not to show you guys that. Let's minimize some stuff here. Our mobile approvals, really nice. This is a mobile responsive site, kind of as Kyle called out early on. You'll kind of see that mode over there as well. But the goal is to give you guys the opportunity to approve invoices anywhere, right? Whether you're on the beach in Boca, best case, or homesick and still trying to get some work done, right? So the idea is you've got the same functionality within the mobile responsive site and able to access anywhere because it is cloud and available anywhere outside of your network, inside of your network, so on and so forth. But same functionality, right? You can approve, disapprove, reject, see the actual image, any of the data, enter GL, right? All of it. The same functions I just showed within that email notification that I access through my email, you can do through the mobile app or mobile responsive site, I should say. Any questions before we move into the Infor integration?
Yep.
So I think a mention was Bell as an example, a phone bill.
Yeah.
If you have a cell phone bill for maybe 500 corporate cell phones, is there an ability through this where it can code to an accounting unit or a cost center based on the phone number? We currently just kind of do a central billing to one spot. We do our own upload to do that.
Okay.
Would this be able to code based on phone number if we had mapping?
Nick, did you hear that?
Yeah, I did. I think it's an interesting use case because it's kind of just using a different data point to control it. It's something we definitely could explore. It doesn't sound like I've got to be honest. I haven't explored this yet, but it doesn't sound like anything that would be too crazy, for the lack of better terms. It's definitely something we can explore if you're interested. I'd love to get our solutions team involved and just talk through that.
Yeah, we can follow up with you on that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it could be something helpful. I mean, potentially would eliminate an upload we have to do.
Sure.
Where there could be maybe more manual error potential, and you just take away the upload.
Yep.
Maybe,
Yeah, makes sense.
500-600 columns if there's a way by phone number.
Yep.
Could also potentially, yeah. Thanks.
Any questions in the
There's
chat?
another question. Just Lori also gave a comment that maybe if you can repeat the question because
Sorry.
people can't hear
Yep.
the questions. Will multiple attachments in the email come in as one or as one batch or multiple batches?
Really good question. Really good question. So if it's multiple invoices in the same email, it will come in as one batch. If it's one attachment with multiple invoices in it, it will come in as that individual transaction. And then there is a UI to kind of break it down within the system so you don't have to print it and rescan it or anything like that. Answer that question okay?
Yes.
We'll let you know in a minute if they ask any more for any more.
Excellent. No, it's good.
We just got 5 minutes left here, Nick. So whatever you feel like you can cover in that amount of time, go for it.
Sounds good. So let me of course, Infor timed out on me. Let me get a quick new Infor session here. I do want to show our Cloud Suite integration. Again, just to kind of show it off. Give me just a second. So I'm going to browse. This is again Infor Cloud Suite. I'm going to go to Payables and get all the way to Document Invoice Interface and just really walk through how this looks, right? Ultimately, once we push the data in, we're going to make the connection to our system and obviously to Infor Cloud Suite, at which point this view image link is going to give that direct access from Infor in context of your daily work back to NorthStar, right? Whether this is, again, in this case, I've done this demo just a few times, but it's really just that direct image link connection like we've done for years from Infor Cloud Suite back to NorthStar. This is also available for Infor 10, again, just like historically. So again, the Infor integration, just I think a really good example of how we've utilized that partnership with Infor to augment what they've got going on. And last but not least, payments, right? The new Document Express, we'll say, right? This is, again, cloud-based NorthStar, very similar functions though, folks, right? The Get Payments button is the equivalent of the Import button. That's going to reach out, get the payment file, pull it into our system, and parse it into individual transactions, right? So from there, we've got 3 transactions, right? These are now getting prepared for an ACH with electronic remittance, right? So if I click on just one of these, you're going to see the document preview of the actual remittance that's going to get sent. Another thing I really like is our ability to show you all of the invoices that are getting paid by this transaction before you send it, right? So for payment reconciliation, you have the ability to see all of the invoices that are getting paid by that check before you even send it. I think it's something that's extremely valuable for those who have those very cumbersome check audit type processes where you're pulling invoices and comparing them to checks and so on and so forth. Now, last but not least, I'd be remiss to show this, the design section. So for any of the classic Document Express customers watching, right, historically, if you needed to make a change to your check or your ACH format you're sending to your bank or your positive pay or any of that, you'd have to work with our support team, which, by the way, they're awesome. Nothing against them. But even better, we give it the ability for you to make those adjustments within NorthStar now, right? We'll give you the empowerment to go in, make adjustments, map the data fields, which you're seeing in gray and dark gray here, map the fields from your Infor data files or otherwise, load them into the system, and then format how that looks. Something that, again, I've been extremely impressed with. This is, again, direct deposit advice for ACH. But for a physical check, it is the exact same. You just see your MICR line, obviously some different setup and defaults in there. And even further, like the ACH. The ACH file, I think, is really cool. Again, if you need to make a change to your ACH file, it's all configurable and set up within the system. Again, trying to minimize that IT involvement and making your lives easier. And then from there, I'm just going to go ahead and generate the ACH, which is going to send the ACH file to the bank, also send that electronic remittance to the vendor so they know what to expect. And again, this is going to kind of bring it full circle, just so you're able to see what the actual payment notification looks like. This is all configurable within NorthStar as well, the body of the email, the text, and then from here, this is going to look familiar. Right, it's going to be that exact template with key data from the payment file and the direct deposit advice.
Nick, are you able to show the payment request e-form real quick before we wrap up?
Sure. Yep. Since we've got a minute, I'd love to. So within the system, we also have again our web form builder. The payment request is the example I have today, but within the system, we have the ability to help you create forms dynamically. Again, another really good example of our low-code, no-code feel of the system. Again, this is just a payment request template, but you could draw this, move this around, add fields, remove fields, change labels. In this case, I'll add an integrated GL connection and require that, meaning that in order to submit this payment request, you need to enter GL. Let's say a file upload as well. If I need a file upload, we'll add that. Maybe I can add a label and whatever you really want there. At which point, again, it's configured to what you guys need. You guys can adjust it on the fly. And it's a really standardized way to replace any of those paper check requests or payment request forms. And also an integration to the system that once submitted, right, it's instantly going to flow through workflow in the same way that those invoices did from intelligent capture, right? The data is entered by your end users. They submit the form. And based on that information, we can automatically get it out for approval or for exceptions or whatever needs to happen in order to finalize and pay that payment or check request. The other good example is expense reimbursements. Right? If you're doing expense reimbursements, this is a really nice way for you to get those expenses, those receipts, that mileage type information into the system so you can get approval and pay those employees for their expenses.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick.